For years, Florida felt unstoppable. People were moving in from New York, New Jersey, California, Illinois, almost everywhere. Mortgage rates were low, remote work was exploding, and buyers were willing to pay almost anything just to lock in a home near the beach, near the golf course, or near the lifestyle they thought Florida promised. But in 2026, that story is changing. Now, to be clear, this is not a statewide 2008-style collapse. In fact, Florida realtors reported that statewide closed sales of existing single-family homes in February 2026 actually rose 3.9% year over year, while the statewide median sale price slipped just 0.7% to $412,000. So when you look at the state as a whole, Florida is not imploding. But when you zoom into specific local markets, especially coastal and formerly overheated ones, the pressure is much more obvious. That's because statewide averages hide local pain. Some Florida markets are dealing with a brutal combination of rising insurance premiums, elevated HOA costs, more inventory, weaker buyer demand, and sellers who are finally being forced to price homes based on today's reality, not yesterday's fantasy. Realtor.com economists and other housing analysts have pointed to exactly those pressures, especially in Florida's coastal metros and pandemic boomtowns. So in this video, we're breaking down 10 Florida markets where home prices are under the most pressure right now in 2026. And more importantly, we're going to explain why it's happening, what it means for buyers, what it means for sellers, and where the biggest risks may still be ahead. Let's start with number 10. Number 10. Homosassa Springs. Homosassa Springs may not get the national attention of Miami, Tampa, or Naples, but that's exactly why it matters. Smaller markets often move quietly until the numbers force people to pay attention. According to Realtor.com's Florida Metro analysis, Homosassa Springs posted a 2.98% drop in home value, with a median value decline of $8,333, bringing the median home list price to about $273,124. That may not sound catastrophic, but for a smaller market, it's a meaningful sign of softening demand. What makes Homosassa important is affordability pressure from a different angle. Buyers who used to stretch for Florida are now much more payment sensitive. Even in lower-priced areas, monthly housing costs are getting squeezed by taxes, insurance, and repairs. And once a smaller market loses momentum, buyers stop rushing, listings sit longer, and sellers start cutting faster than expected. Number 9. Port St. Lucie. Port St. Lucie has been one of Florida's most watched growth markets for years, but that growth has started to cool. Zillow's latest local value tracking showed the average home value in Port St. Lucie down about 3.8% over the past year, and local market reporting has shown median sale prices hovering around the low $400,000 range as sellers work harder to attract buyers. Why is that happening here? Because Port St. Lucie became a classic affordability trade-up market. Buyers who got priced out of South Florida looked north for more house, more yard, and lower costs. But when mortgage rates stayed elevated and ownership costs remained stubbornly high, the buyer pool started thinning out. This is one of those markets where prices don't need to collapse for the pain to feel real. If you bought near the peak and now need to sell, even a modest dip can erase leverage very quickly. Number 8. Tampa St. Petersburg Clearwater. Tampa was one of the biggest pandemic winners in the entire country. It had migration, job growth, lifestyle appeal, and strong investor attention. But when a market rises that fast, it doesn't take much to create a correction. Realtor.com found that the Tampa St. Petersburg Clearwater Metro posted a 4.2% year-over-year median home value decline, or about $14,707, with a median listing price around $400,000. On top of that, Realtor.com's 2026 forecast placed Tampa among the metros expected to see further price declines this year. Tampa's story matters because it shows how quickly a hot market can become a negotiation market. Buyers have more choices, builders are still competing in some sub-markets, and sellers can no longer assume multiple offers will bail them out. If you're a buyer, Tampa is becoming the kind of place where you can ask for concessions again, closing cost help, rate buydowns, inspection repairs, maybe even price reductions after due diligence. Number 7. Sebastian Vero Beach West, Vero Corridor. This market doesn't always get included in the broader Florida conversation, but the numbers say it should. Realtor.com ranked Sebastian Vero Beach West Vero Corridor among the state's hardest hit metros, with a 4.22% decline, a median value drop of $15,755, and a median home list price around $357, now $379. Source: what's especially interesting here is the psychology. Many sellers in coastal Florida are still anchored to pandemic pricing, while buyers are increasingly focused on long-term ownership costs. That gap is dangerous. The market doesn't need panic to move lower. It just needs buyers to hesitate and sellers to blink. And when enough listings get stale at the same time, even desirable lifestyle markets start feeling heavier than they look on paper. Number 6. Lakeland Winter Haven. Lakeland Winter Haven used to be seen as one of the smarter alternatives for buyers priced out of Tampa and Orlando. It offered more space and relatively lower prices, which made it attractive during the boom years. But Realtor.com found that Lakeland Winter Haven posted a 4.4% year-over-year value decline, or about $13,614, with a median listing price around $339,900. Source: this is a great example of what happens when affordable stops feeling affordable. Once financing costs rose, even second-tier and third-tier boom markets started losing steam. Buyers who were previously willing to compromise on location for price are now reconsidering the total monthly payment instead. And if that payment still feels too high, demand weakens. Lakeland doesn't have to be in crisis for prices to grind lower. A slow correction is still a correction. Number 5. Deltona Daytona Beach Ormond Beach. At number 5 is Deltona Daytona Beach Ormond Beach, another Florida market where the correction is becoming hard to ignore. Realtor.com's national metro comparison showed this market down 4.4% year over year, with about $14,351 in median value lost. It also ranked among Florida metros, seeing some of the biggest home value pressure in recent reporting. Source: this area is especially important because it captures several Florida themes at once: coastal exposure, affordability strain, and a growing disconnect between list prices and what buyers are actually willing to pay. Even Florida-based realtors have argued that many sellers are simply coming back down to earth after aiming too high. In other words, some of these price declines are not forced selling, they're reality catching up with expectations. Source number 4. Naples, Marco Island. Naples is often associated with luxury, wealth, and resilience. That's what makes this one so striking. Realtor.com's Florida Value Loss Roundup placed Naples Marco Island among the hardest hit metros, with a 5.70% drop and a median value decline of $29,264. Separate local reporting in early 2026 also showed Naples list prices down sharply year over year. Source: luxury markets are fascinating during a correction because they don't always crash first, but when they soften, the dollar losses get big fast. A 5% move in an expensive market can erase far more paper wealth than a much larger percentage move in a lower-cost area. In Naples, that means sellers who got used to ultra-aggressive pricing during the pandemic are now having to make real adjustments. And buyers? They're no longer chasing. They're comparing, negotiating, and waiting. Number 3. Punta Gorda. Punta Gorda has become one of the clearest warning signs in Florida housing. Realtor.com data showed Punta Gorda posting the largest percentage drop in home value among the Florida metros in that analysis, with a 7.97% decline and roughly $26,624 erased from the median property value in just 1 year. Reporting on the market also highlighted swelling inventory and widespread price reductions, including large cuts on higher-end homes. Source: why is Punta Gorda getting hit so hard? Because it benefited enormously from the pandemic-era affordability trade. Buyers who couldn't stretch into Naples or Sarasota looked here instead. Developers and investors followed the momentum. But once demand cooled, that extra speculative energy became a problem. Markets driven by emotion can reverse when emotion leaves, and when buyers start thinking in terms of insurance premiums, roof age, flood risk, and carrying costs, not just sunshine and square footage, momentum disappears. Number 2, Cape Coral Fort Myers. Cape Coral Fort Myers is one of the biggest stories in Florida real estate right now. Realtor.com's Metro Value Loss list showed the market down 7.9% year over year, or about $29,393, with a median listing price around $399,900. Even more alarming, a 2026 forecast highlighted Cape Coral as the U.S. metro expected to see the sharpest home price decline, with an estimated 10.2% drop. Source. That combination matters. This isn't just a market that already fell. It's a market many analysts believe could stay under pressure. Cape Coral also reflects some of the strongest forces reshaping Florida housing: insurance shocks, slower migration, buyer fatigue, and a market that simply got too hot too fast. If you're a buyer, this is the kind of market where patience may pay off. If you're a seller, overpricing is no longer a strategy. It's a liability. Number 1, Northport Bradenton, Sarasota. And at number 1, it's Northport Bradenton, Sarasota. This market topped Realtor.com's list of major metros with the biggest year-over-year home value losses, showing an 8.6% decline, or about $36,423, with a median listing price near $478,800. It was also forecast to be among the U.S. metros with the fastest price declines in 2026, with an expected drop of 8.9%. Source. This metro captures the full Florida reset in one place. It boomed hard during the pandemic. Buyers rushed in. Prices jumped fast. But those prices were difficult to sustain once rates stayed higher, inventory improved, and ownership costs kept climbing. And because this region has both lifestyle demand and elevated carrying costs, it's incredibly sensitive to buyer confidence. Once confidence weakens, the correction becomes obvious. Sellers who miss the top are discovering that yesterday's comps don't close today's deals. So what should buyers and sellers take away from all of this? If you're a buyer, 2026 may finally be giving you something Florida hasn't offered in a while: leverage. But don't confuse falling prices with automatic value. In many of these markets, the real affordability issue isn't just the purchase price. It's the monthly payment plus insurance plus taxes plus HOA plus maintenance. So before you celebrate a price cut, ask for the insurance quote. Ask about flood zones. Ask for the age of the roof, the HVAC system, and the water heater. If it's a condo, ask about reserve studies and special assessments. A cheaper sticker price can still become an expensive mistake. If you're a seller, the message is simple. The market has changed and pricing strategy matters more than ever. Florida realtors and local agents have repeatedly said that realistic pricing is the difference between getting showings and getting ignored. Buyers are more cautious now. They have more options, and they are much less emotional than they were in 2021 and 2022. If you're even slightly overpriced, your listing can go stale fast. Source. And if you're an investor, this is where discipline matters. Florida still has long-term population growth and lifestyle appeal, but not every market deserves the same assumptions anymore. The easy money era masked a lot of bad underwriting. In 2026, those mistakes are getting exposed. The best opportunities may come from sellers who need certainty, not from markets that merely look cheaper on a chart. The bottom line is this: Florida is not one market. It's a patchwork of local markets, and in 2026, some of them are correcting a lot faster than others. The headline may say crash, but in many cases, what we're really watching is a sharp reset after years of unsustainable growth. Still, for homeowners who bought at the top, or buyers who don't fully understand the carrying costs, that reset can feel very real. And the biggest lesson of all? In real estate, the hottest markets often create the coldest surprises. A script and research base used for this script. Main is script को current 2026 market reporting के base पर build किया है, especially in sources से. Florida statewide February 2026 housing data showed closed sales rising while median prices eased only slightly, which supports the idea that Florida overall is not collapsing, but some local markets are under much heavier pressure. Source. Florida Realtors' 2026 trends coverage also emphasized that the state is moving toward a more balanced market, not a uniform crash, while still acknowledging affordability and insurance pressure. Source Realtor.com's metro-level reporting identified several Florida metros with the largest year-over-year home value losses, including Northport, Bradenton, Sarasota, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Lakeland, Winter Haven, Deltona, Daytona Beach, Ormond Beach, and Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater. Source: a separate Florida-focused value loss roundup highlighted Punta Gorda, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Northport, Bradenton, Sarasota, Naples, Marco Island, Sebastian Vero Beach West Vero Corridor, Port St. Lucie, Wildwood, The Villages, Deltona, Daytona Beach, Ormond Beach, and Homosassa Springs among the most pressured metros from January 2025 to January 2026. Source: Realtor.com's 2026 forecast, covered by Newsweek, also showed Cape Coral, Northport, Deltona, and Tampa among the U.S. metros expected to post some of the fastest price declines. Source: